this week's episode of the Good Dram Show with me, Chris Goodrum. Okay, first off, an apology for not doing an episode of the show last week, but I was dying. Not literally, obviously, otherwise I'd be dead and I wouldn't be doing this episode of the show, but I had the flu, okay? I was out of action for a week and there was, I'm not going to go to the details, but that's suffice to say I was in no fit state to do an episode of the show last week. But I'm recovered now and it's all back to normal, or as normal can be, I suppose. Which brings us to this week's episode of the show. I thought it was about time to take another look at Puni, the Italian distillery. Certainly now, since I've got the last year's two limited edition releases, I got the samples of those, and I thought it's about time to sort of take another look at their core range as they're now onto batch 3 and are now available in the UK, having sorted out a distribution deal with a company called JBE Imports. So just before we carry on, just a big thank you to the distillery and to JBE Imports for the samples for today's episode of the show. Appreciate the support. So let's not say anything unpleasant about them. Not that I'm going to. As you know, when I tasted them for the first time, I think it was about over a year ago now, I think it was. I thought they showed real promise, and I thought they were really interesting, and I'm glad they're now available in the UK, because I think certainly the people that have purchased bottles of them, I've just had some really good feedback. A lot of people have enjoyed it, certainly when we've done the in-store tasting, which went really, really well. So yeah, I think good things on the horizon for the Puni Distillery. I think the last time I kind of went into a bit of detail about the distillery, I think it's been going since about 2010, and everything is gravity fed. It's all below ground. It's all quite funky, and I think, if you want to find out the information, it's all out there on their website anyway. But I'm not going to really go into much more detail on that, but we'll just take a look at today's lineup. Right, we're going to kick off with the first of their, I suppose, what you'd call core bottlings. I suppose this is the Nova. It's bottled at 43%. Like I said, this is batch 3. I think the spirit's about 3 years old, or thereabouts. This is the unpeated bottling, aged in ex-American oak casks. So that's where we're going to kick off with. Then we're going to kick off with the first of the two limited edition bottlings, limited-ish edition. I think this is the second release they've done of this particular bottling, called the Soul, which is basically aged for 2 years in ex-first fill American oak, with a further 2 years in ex-Pedro Ximenez casks, bottled at 46%, and hopefully, only 2 years in PX casks, hopefully that's not going to sort of overwhelm, the actual spirit. Again, unpeated, as is all of their spirit, unpeated in the traditional terms of peating, but they do a peated release, which we're going to come on to as the third one, called the Alba, again bottled at 43%, roughly about 3 years old. Initial maturation is in ex-Masala casks, the sort of sweet dessert wine, with a finishing period, of which I don't actually know, in ex-Isla casks. So that's how they get the sort of the peated character into their malt. It's a bit like Penderyn Distillery. They do exactly, or did do exactly the same thing with their peated release. It wasn't actually peated barley, but it was finished in ex-peated casks, so could be interesting. If I remember rightly, the batch one that was fairly lightly peated, just a sort of a delicate amount of peat, so it should be interesting to see what batch 3 is like. And the last one we'll be looking at is called the Nero. Again, this was a limited release of about 3,000 bottles, and spent its entire 3 years being matured in ex-South Tyrolean Pinot Noir casks. So again, looking at the colour, it's not too heavy, and hopefully, you know, the finish will be, well, it's not really a finish, I suppose. Hopefully the wine cask won't have overwhelmed the spirit, because that would be a bit of a shame, I think. But obviously we will find that out in due course. So that's this afternoon's little lineup. Let's kick off with a bit of Nova then, I think. Right, okay, so let's see what the nose gives us. Fresh, lots and lots of barley, a little bit of honey, quite fruity, apricot, sort of a little bit of, almost kind of tangerine, apple. Not what I would call overly estery, but pleasantly fruity. There's a little bit of crisp citrus, white fruit, and it's got a lovely softness to it, lovely barley softness. It's got that kind of spey kind of character, that sort of, you know, crisp, fresh, barley led. And again, I think for sort of like for a 3-year-old spirit, or 3 or 4-year-old spirit, it's got a lot of character. There is a lot going on there. I mean, alright, it's not mega complex, but you know, it's a lovely nose, really nice, and I really like this. So let's see what the palate gives. Quite full. Again, opens with that sort of crisp, fresh barley character. A little bit of creamy oak kind of coming through on the mid palate. Fills out really nicely, getting some lovely juicy fruit, some apricot, some apple, a little bit of white fruit as well. Touch of spice on the finish, a little bit of a grip on the finish. It's slightly mouth-watering. Yeah, I mean, I think from memory, I'm just trying to remember, I think it was the finish that was a little bit on the short side on the first batch that I remember tasting. But certainly, batch 3 it seems to be sort of absolutely on point. Lovely mouth-watering finish. Yeah, all right. Like I said, it's a 3 or 4-year-old spirit. It's not hugely complex, but it certainly has loads and loads of character, loads of barley character, wonderfully soft. But with that sort of citrus grip as well. I really like that. That's impressive. Right, okay, so let's move on to the soul. Let's see what the nose gives us on this then, shall we? Now, the PX is, as judging from the colour, quite subtle. It's taken a little bit of the fresher edge off the nose, but it's still pleasantly barleyed, a little bit of citrus, and with the PX just adding that slightly rich dried fruit, a little bit of grapiness. Yeah, it's slightly fuller possibly on the nose, really nicely balanced. I'm getting a little bit of coffee possibly. Certainly some nice dried grape notes. It's all, yeah, really well balanced, I think. See what the palate gives. Creamy dried grape, raisins, a little bit of treacle, a little bit more PX on the palate, but lovely citric middle, getting the barley character kind of coming through, the minerality on the finish, quite mouth-watering. Like I said, that sort of lovely sort of citric mineral finish kind of freshens it all up. But all the while that sort of dried fruit is kind of lingering at the edges. And you know, that is just a lovely mouthful, it has to be said. A little bit of spice right on the aftertaste. Again, just really well balanced, I think, and yeah, that's good. Okay, so let's move on to the Alba. Let's see what the nose gives us on this one, shall we? A lot more peat than I remember it has to be said. Quite. I'm amazed at sort of, you know, how much peat character actually comes out of the casks. You know, I mean, if I didn't know that this had been finished in peated casks, I would have sworn this was made from peated barley. I mean, there's a lot of slightly medicinal, earthy kind of peat, but again, it's all really well balanced. I'm certainly getting some of the sort of grapey masala. I'm certainly getting the barley, the citrus. It's just fabulously balanced, absolutely brilliant whiskey. And that's just what you want from a great whiskey, it has to be said. You know, you want complexity, and this has got complexity through, you know, the spirit character, the casks as well, and you know, everything is adding an element to the finished product, which is, you know, absolutely how it should be. A little bit of coffee kind of coming through now. Very dusty, almost violety sort of peat. That's lovely. Really impressive. Let's see what the palate's like. That's a lot of peat. It's got that kind of coal dust kind of peat, like licking a piece of coal. That just lingers. I mean, again, it has some fresh barley character, a little bit of citrus, a little bit of the dried fruit from the masala, just kind of giving it sort of like a bit of weight to it. But the emphasis is firmly on the peat, it has to be said. I mean, it just kind of like, you know, starts off with quite a lot of peat, it carries on with the peat, and finishes with the peat, you know. It's that, like I said, that lovely kind of coal dust kind of peat kind of character. Really, really nice. It's all kind of sticks to the inside of your mouth. It's really quite impressive. And like I said, it's not just purely about the peat. I mean, yes, the peat is probably the most dominant characteristic from this particular bottling, but certainly, you know, you can pick up the masala cask. You can certainly pick up the spirit character as well. So, you know, yeah, I think that's really very, very good. Right, okay, and finally on to the Pinot Noir. Now, I don't think very many bottles of this actually made it over into the UK, and I'd just like to say thank you to the distillery and to JBE for cracking open one of the bottles so I could get to try it. Anyway, so let's see what the nose gives us. Again, I mean, very subtle, really balanced. The Pinot Noir is just giving it that sort of slightly sort of red cherry fruit, touch of kind of sweet-ish kind of spice, not quite, almost kind of peppery, but not quite. Again, there's lots of barley character, citrus, minerals. Again, the balance is absolutely spot on. Really, very, very impressive. No off notes, no funkiness. Really clean. Just lovely balance. Really, very, very good. A little bit of syrupiness coming through now, but again, it's all balanced by the sort of like the citrus and the minerality and the fresher elements. Yeah, that's lovely. Let's see what the palate gives. More of the wine cask on the palate, has to be said. It kind of kicks off with some slightly dry and dusty tannins. I'm getting sort of syrup coated red fruits, touch of minerality, a little bit of citrus, certainly the mouth-watering, lovely mouth-watering finish. It's got some grip to it, but it's got some lovely barley character as well. A little bit of coffee, a little bit of sort of black pepper and chocolate, dark chocolate. That's a lovely mouthful. Again, maybe sort of the emphasis is a little bit more on the Pinot Noir cask on the palate, but again, I still think it's got some lovely balance to it. It's not too OTT. I'm still getting a little bit of the minerality, the citrus, a little bit of barley, although like I said, I think it's more about the Pinot Noir cask on the palate, but absolutely pristinely clean. No funkiness there whatsoever. No butricness. No weird characteristics. It's just really very, very impressive. So good stuff. Right, okay, so let's sum today's episode of the show up. I think what the Puni Distillery are doing is really impressive, and I think that more and more, as it gets more widely known, shall we say, and more people sort of get the opportunity to taste their spirit, I think it's gonna sort of do pretty well, to be honest with you. I think it's going to have that sort of similar appeal to some of the sort of the more established European sort of European-ish kind of whiskies, Mackmyre, etc., etc. I certainly think it's going to have it. It's if it carries on producing sort of great spirit like this and keeps up with the distribution to the UK and doesn't whack the price up, that's always going to be the killer, it has to be said. I mean, at the moment, they're not cheap. European whiskey never actually is, but I think they're sort of just about the right price at the moment. I think if they start to go a little bit too more expensive, I think that will kind of put the kibosh on sales to a certain extent. So I think you have to be sort of careful with the pricing, but I think as more people get to taste them and try them, I think they'll come round to realising what great whiskey the Italians are making, and why not at the end of the day. No different to any other country with access to good water supply, good barley, and hopefully and obviously good casks. So yeah. Anyway. I love the Nova. I think it's a lovely whiskey. Like I said, if you like your Speyside whiskies, you like the sort of the crisp, citric, barley scented character of the Speyside whiskies, then that is definitely up your street, so to speak. The Soul, lovely balance, and again, proof that you don't need to sort of swamp your whiskey with sherry character just to sort of get some sherry, appeal to the sherry monster brigade, and I'm glad that they haven't done so, because I think the balance on that is absolutely spot on. The Alba, lovely whiskey, again more peat than I remember, and again just amazes me at how much sort of peat character you can get out of reused casks as opposed to actually peating your own barley. Maybe at some point they will actually do bottling from peated barley, and it would be interesting to see how different it is to this particular bottling. But I guess we shall see on that one. And the Nero, like the like the soul. I thought the balance was really very, very good, absolutely spot on again, really clean, and not sort of like OTT on the wininess, even though it spent obviously its entire 3 years or so in the ex-wine cask. So yeah, there you have it. That's Puni. I think if you still haven't had the opportunity to try it, you certainly should do. I think we've still got some sample bottles open in the shop, so if you want to pop in and have a try, then certainly we have samples available. And if you don't obviously live in Nottingham, but you have the opportunity, get hold of a bottle. I don't know if they're sort of worldwide availability as yet. Certainly, I don't know whether they've actually made it to the States or that kind of part of the world. But if they have, certainly worth checking out. So anyway, that's this week's episode of the show. I hope you've enjoyed it, and hope you tune in next week for more of the same. Well, obviously not more puny, but more of the same. You know what I mean. Good afternoon.